Let's dive into one of the most incredible, most dramatic moments in all of ancient history. We're going to talk about a time when the world's only superpower didn't just fall, it completely vanished. And when it did, the entire center of global power shifted, and it would never be the same again. For 3 whole centuries, the Assyrian Empire was the world. It was the first real hyperpower. Just try to imagine a force so utterly dominant that for generations, it felt permanent, like it would last forever. For most people, it was the only reality they'd ever known. But here's the thing. Assyria didn't just fade away gracefully. It imploded. The collapse was so fast and so total that it took what historians call a perfect storm. You needed this very specific, once-in-a-millennium set of circumstances for a supposedly eternal empire to just get wiped off the map. So what exactly was this perfect storm? Well, it was a clash of 2 massive forces. On one side, you had an Assyrian empire that was basically rotting from the inside. It was weak, it was divided, and on the other side, you had a brand new, hungry, powerful alliance that saw its moment and was ready to pounce. This right here gives you a sense of just how chaotic this whole period was. Look at the alliance on the right. You've got Egypt, Assyria's ancient mortal enemy, suddenly riding to its rescue. It was a totally desperate, last-ditch move by the old guard, trying to stop a new world from being born. So out of the ashes of Assyria, a new powerhouse starts to rise, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and its architect was this incredibly ambitious king named Nabopolassar. He was a southern Aramaean, a Chaldean, who managed to unite all these different forces to carve out a brand new destiny for Babylon. And this is the year it all became real. 605 BC. At the Battle of Carchemish, the Babylonian forces, led by the crown prince Nebuchadnezzar, they met the combined armies of Egypt and what was left of Assyria. And the Egyptians, they were completely routed. In a single decisive battle, Egypt's days as a major player in the region were just over. So, just as Nebuchadnezzar is celebrating this massive victory, he gets word that his father, the king, has died back in Babylon. Now, this was a brand new dynasty, right? The throne was vulnerable. So instead of taking the long, safe route home, he makes this incredible, high-stakes, life-or-death dash straight across the unforgiving Arabian desert to get back and secure his crown. He actually made it, and that's how the reign of one of history's greatest kings began. Now, caught right in the middle of this epic Game of Thrones was a much, much smaller player, the tiny kingdom of Judah. And trapped between these clashing empires, it was about to make a series of absolutely catastrophic mistakes. This quote really, really puts it all in perspective. Judah was minuscule. It was politically weak, militarily a nobody. So for a nation this small to even think about rebelling against a superpower like Babylon, well, it wasn't just brave, it was absolutely astounding. And the crazy part is that the king, a guy named Zedekiah, he knew this. He didn't want to revolt. The prophet Jeremiah gave him a direct, crystal clear message, supposedly from God: submit to Babylon and your people will live, or rebel and you will be utterly destroyed. But the religious nationalists in his court, they were convinced God would be forced to save them, and they completely overrode their king. They forced his hand, pushing him into a second, completely hopeless rebellion. And the result was exactly what the prophet had foretold. Jerusalem fell, and the price for this massive gamble was just devastatingly high. The price was most personal for King Zedekiah himself. He was captured trying to flee towards Egypt. The Babylonians brought him back, and in an act of just unimaginable cruelty, they executed his entire family right in front of him. Then they blinded him, making sure that the last thing he would ever see was the death of his own children, before dragging him off to a life of exile in Babylon. So this leads us to a really crucial question. Their land was gone, their temple was a pile of rubble, and their king was mutilated and exiled. So many other peoples in this exact situation just vanished from history. So how and why did the Judeans survive? This right here, this was the pivot that changed everything. Without a temple, they couldn't perform their rituals, so they were forced to completely reformulate their religious identity. They shifted from a faith that was centered on a place, the temple, to a faith centered on a sacred text, the Law of Moses. It was this incredible innovation that allowed them to keep their identity for the next 2,500 years, even without a country. But the Babylonian Empire that had created this whole situation, well, it would come to its own very bizarre end, just a few decades later. And this story involves one of the absolute strangest kings in all of antiquity. Okay, so meet King Nabonidus. For over 10 years, this guy left his son, Belshazzar, in charge of the capital, abandoned the throne, and just moved to a remote desert oasis called Tima. Seriously, this is some of the most baffling behavior of any monarch in history, and historians are still trying to figure out what on earth was going on. So we have three main theories that try to explain this. Was he a religious ascetic, a devotee of the moon god Sin who just wanted to get away from it all? Was he a political unifier trying to promote a new god that the whole empire could worship? Or was he an economist out there searching for new trade routes to deal with some ruinous inflation? Each theory has some evidence, but honestly, none of them fully explains a 10-year absence. So while Nabonidus is out in the desert, his son Belshazzar is ruling back in Babylon. And as the story goes in the book of Daniel, while this massive Persian army is camped outside the city walls, besieging it for over a year, Belshazzar decides it's time to throw a huge, lavish party. Right in the middle of this feast, something happens that just stops everyone cold. A disembodied hand appears out of thin air and writes these 4 cryptic words on the palace wall. As you can imagine, the mood in the room changes instantly. Now, here's the interesting part. The words themselves weren't that hard to read for anyone who spoke Aramaic. Mene means numbered. Tekel is the Aramaic word for shekel, which is a unit of weight, so it basically means to be weighed. The problem wasn't translation, it was interpretation. What did it all mean? So they bring in the Judean prophet Daniel, and he delivers this absolutely chilling interpretation. Your days are numbered, you have been weighed on the scales of justice, and you have been found wanting, and your kingdom is going to be divided Upharsin, which just so happens to be a very clever pun on the Aramaic word for Persians. According to the biblical text, Belshazzar was killed, and the city of Babylon fell to the Persians that very same night. But this wasn't just the end of another empire. This was the end of an entire world order. This, right here, was the truly epic shift. For thousands of years, global power had been centered in one place, the Fertile Crescent, home to Semitic-speaking peoples like the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. With the fall of Babylon, power shifted east to the Indo-Aryan Persians, a completely different cultural and linguistic group. It was a total reset. The center of world power left Mesopotamia, and it has never, ever returned. This one event truly changed everything. And it forces us to ask this really huge question. What happens when a geopolitical center of gravity, one that has held the world in place for millennia, just suddenly disappears? The consequences of that single night in Babylon are still echoing today.